Welcome back to the Deep Dive series here on Baha'i Reflections. We're the place where we dig into complex source materials and, well, try to pull out the essential knowledge for you.
Great to be back.
And hey, if you're interested in more content like this, or if you're finding value in these explorations we're doing, please take just a second right now and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, it really helps us out.
It does. And, for that exclusive stuff, early access, consider joining a membership. We really, really appreciate that support. It's what lets us keep bringing you these detailed studies.
And it's truly our pleasure to continue this journey with you. We're, as you know, deep into our exploration of these foundational texts, the ones used for, well, spiritual growth and building capacity within the Bahá'í Faith, the Ruhi Institute books.
That's right.
These books, they're really vital tools, for both individual and collective transformation.
Absolutely. And for anyone just jumping into the series now, these are basically the core texts designed to help people enhance their capacity for service. It's all about encouraging daily reading of the Baha'i writings, really engaging with community life, and internalizing those spiritual principles that are meant to rebuild the world. We are currently working our way through Book 4, The Twin Manifestations.
Right. And participants getting into this book, they're usually ready to really delve into the history, the circumstances surrounding the birth, and sort of the gradual unfolding of the Baha'i revelation.
Yeah.
The history here isn't just dates and facts. It's inseparable from the spiritual mission itself.
Exactly. And today our focus is entirely on section 2 of 3, which is the life of the Báb. Now, if you haven't already, we really recommend going back and listening to our discussion on part 1, the greatness of this day.
Definitely. It sets the stage.
It really does. It gives you that crucial prophetic context. But now we're shifting focus squarely onto the Báb himself, his dramatic, incredibly brief, and just unbelievably potent ministry as the forerunner.
And our mission here, it's not just about recounting events chronologically like reading a history book. We're trying to gain a real appreciation for the sheer potency of his short ministry. And crucially, we want to understand how to narrate his story by highlighting the spiritual truths that are embedded within those historical facts.
So looking for the deeper meaning.
Exactly. We're looking for the evidence of divine intervention. Things like the innate knowledge he possessed from childhood, his acceptance of suffering, not as tragedy, but as necessary guidance for humanity, and the, frankly, undeniable fact that his influence was impossible to stamp out, even with intense persecution, torture, and ultimately martyrdom.
Okay, quite a task. Let's unpack this monumental journey then, starting with the context and his early life. I mean, the first thing that just jumps out is how incredibly short his ministry was.
Absolutely. That's the starting point, really. Understanding the context of the Báb's dispensation. It was stunningly short, just 9 years. From 1844, the year he declared his mission, until 1853, the year of his martyrdom.
9 years. I mean, you think about the grand sweep of religious history. Moses, Christ, Muhammad. Their dispensations span centuries, lifetimes. 9 years feels like a flash.
It does.
What does that brevity tell us about the intensity maybe of the spiritual forces involved?
Well, it suggests an immediate, almost explosive force. And its purpose was very specific: preparation. The primary goal of this entire 9-year period was explicitly to prepare humanity for the coming revelation of Baha'u'lláh.
Okay.
The sources suggest that even though the dispensation itself was short, the spiritual forces it unleashed were so intense, so powerful, that their effects are expected to continue rippling through, the social and spiritual fabric of the world for literally hundreds of generations. It was a catalyst, not a slow build.
That makes a lot of sense, like a sudden dawn needing to pierce a really deep darkness right away. So let's look at his background. His name was Sayyid Ali Muhammad, born October 20th, 1819, in Shiraz, southern Persia at the time. Can you just tell us a bit about the significance of that title, Sayyid, in that context?
Oh, Sayyid is absolutely vital here. It signifies that he traced his lineage directly back to the Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam.
Right.
And this wasn't just an interesting family fact. In that Shi'i context, it was considered a necessary prerequisite for anyone claiming the station of the promised Come.
Come, meaning?
He who ariseth. The people of that region, particularly the Shi'i Muslims, were living in intense expectation, actively awaiting this promised figure foretold in their scriptures. His lineage was a key signifier.
And tragedy struck early in his life, didn't it? His father died when he was very young.
Yes, he was raised by his maternal uncle. And this actually leads us directly into one of the most fascinating aspects of his childhood, this whole concept of innate knowledge, divine capacity versus just academic learning.
Right, the idea that he didn't need schooling in the conventional sense.
Precisely. The understanding is that the Báb was endowed by God with this innate knowledge. Fundamentally, he didn't require human teachers, but out of respect for his uncle's wishes, he did attend school.
And that's where we get that incredible story, the one that really highlights that his wisdom wasn't acquired, it was just there.
Yes, the teacher's account. It's quite telling. The teacher asked him to recite the opening words of the Quran, the Fatiha.
A standard exercise.
Exactly. But the Báb didn't just rattle it off. He hesitated. And he apparently pleaded with the teacher, saying something like, unless he understood the significance of the words, he couldn't possibly try to pronounce them.
Wow. That's an immediate challenge to just rote learning, isn't it?
It's a profound display of inherent authority, even as a child. The teacher, perhaps initially annoyed or just not grasping the depth, was then completely astonished, because the Báb proceeded to explain the spiritual meaning of those opening words with, in the teacher's own description, such knowledge and fluency.
So not just repeating, but interpreting deeply.
It wasn't just theology he'd learned.
Yeah.
It was an intuitive, direct comprehension of divine truth pouring out of him.
And the teacher's reaction?
Instant recognition. The teacher felt utterly inadequate, completely unworthy to teach this child. The account says he felt impelled to take the Báb straight back to his uncle, declaring basically, this boy doesn't need teachers like me.
Understandably, the uncle was probably frustrated at first, right? Thinking the Báb was being difficult.
Yes. The sources mention the uncle sternly rebuked him for not just following instructions. But the core point is clear. No amount of discipline or conventional schooling could suppress the natural flow of his intuitive, God-given knowledge.
That really gets to the heart of superhuman wisdom, doesn't it? It shows his capacity was from God, not earned through study. It sort of challenges the whole institutional learning structure of the time.
Absolutely. His authority wasn't based on credentials. It came directly from God.
So as he grew into adulthood, he did follow a more conventional path for a time, working as a merchant.
Yes. He worked with his uncle in the trading business in Bushir, a port city. He also married, but very tragically, his only son, named Ahmed, died in infancy. This is before his declaration.
Even before his public mission began, the writings paint a really vivid picture of his character, don't they?
They do. Shoghi Effendi, who was the guardian of the Baha'i Faith, described him beautifully. He spoke of the gentle, the youthful and irresistible person of the Báb, matchless in his meekness, imperturbable in his serenity, magnetic in his utterance.
Gentle, youthful, irresistible, meek, serene, magnetic. Wow.
It's that combination, isn't it? Innate spiritual power combined with this striking humility and attractiveness.
Yeah.
Really defines his early life.
That's actually the perfect bridge to the moment everything changed, the declaration in Shiraz.
Yes, and this event wasn't accidental. It was meticulously prepared for, spiritually speaking. It really centers around a figure named Sayyid Qaim.
Okay.
He was a deeply respected teacher and spiritual guide in Karbala, in what's now Iraq. He spent his life teaching his students about the prophecies concerning the coming of the Qaim.
Preparing them.
Exactly. And upon his death, his very final instructions were quite dramatic. He told his students not to linger, not even to mourn him, but to immediately disperse, leave their homes, and actively seek the promised beloved, the Qaim, with hearts completely detached from worldly things.
That takes incredible faith, just to uproot your life based on that instruction.
Tremendous faith.
Yeah.
And among his most dedicated students was a man named Mullah Hossein. He becomes the central figure in the declaration story.
Right.
Following Sayyid Qaim's passing, Mullah Hossein retreated for 40 days of intense prayer and meditation, seeking divine guidance. And then he felt this undeniable spiritual pull drawing him north towards the city of Shiraz.
He didn't know why Shiraz specifically.
Not explicitly, just that he was guided there. And this is where the historic encounter happens, just outside the city gates of Shiraz a few hours before sunset. The Báb, who's then this youthful figure, just 25 years old, met Mullah Hossein. He greeted him warmly, invited him to his home. The accounts make a point of emphasizing the Bab's immediate personal hospitality, even noting that the Bab himself prepared the tea.
Setting a very intimate scene for something world-changing.
Precisely. It creates this atmosphere of warmth and respect before the spiritual drama unfolds.
So how did the conversation begin?
Quite directly, actually. The Bab started by asking Mullah Hussain, who he now regarded as the successor to his teacher, Sayyid Qaim. Mullah Hussain explained that his teacher hadn't appointed a successor in the usual sense. Instead, the command was clear. Go find the Qaim, the promised beloved himself, and no one else.
Okay, so he laid out his mission.
Yes. Then the Bab probed deeper. He asked if Sayyid Qaim had provided any specific details, any distinguishing features or signs, to help identify the Qaim when they found him.
And this is crucial, right? Because in that culture, specific verifiable signs were expected as proof.
Absolutely critical, especially for someone like Mullah Hussain, who was highly learned in Islamic prophecies and traditions. Vague feelings wouldn't be enough. They needed concrete markers based on scripture.
So what were those signs? The list is quite detailed.
It is. Mullah Hussain recounted the specific proofs passed down through tradition. The promised one must be of pure lineage, tracing back to the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter Faimi.
Okay, the Sayyid lineage again?
Yes. He must be of illustrious descent. He must be between the ages of 20 and 30. He must possess innate, divinely given knowledge. He should be of medium height, abstain from smoking, and be free from any physical deficiency or deformity.
Wow. That's a very specific checklist.
It is. Imagine Mullah Hussain reciting these ancient, revered requirements, looking across the room at this young, incredibly gracious host who had just welcomed him. The spiritual tension must have been immense.
I can only imagine. What happened next?
According to the account, the Bab paused for a moment. Then, with what's described as a vibrant voice, he declared, "Behold, all these signs are manifest in me."
Just like that. Bold.
Utterly bold. And he didn't just state it. He then proceeded to demonstrate, point by point, conclusively, how every single one of those signs applied directly to himself.
How is that demonstration conclusive? Was it just pointing out the physical things, the lineage?
That was part of it, yes. The lineage, the age, the physical characteristics, these were things Mullah Hussain could verify or knew to be true. But the ultimate proof, the undeniable demonstration, was spiritual.
Okay.
Immediately following that declaration, the Bab gave instant proof of his claim to innate knowledge. Without being asked, he began to reveal, with astonishing speed and eloquence, the first chapter of his commentary on the Surah of Joseph from the Quran.
Just spontaneously revealing scripture.
Exactly. This wasn't a prepared speech. It was divine inspiration pouring forth, a torrent of profound insight and knowledge. This was the ultimate, irrefutable proof of his divine station and commission. It left Mullah Hussain utterly convinced.
And then came the titles, right? Defining his role and Mullah Hussain's.
Yes. He declared, "I am the Bab, the gate of God." This title, the Bab, means the gate. He was signifying that he was the gate through which people would reach the even greater promised one yet to come.
The gates of Bahá'u'lláh.
Precisely. And Mullah Hussain, as his very first believer, was given the title Babul-Bab, which means the gate of that gate.
Wow. So this declaration, which happened on the eve of May 23rd, 1844, the Bab was exactly 25. It came with a condition, didn't it? About when it could be publicly proclaimed.
A crucial immediate condition. The Bab instructed Mullah Hussain that the news must be kept secret for the time being. It could only be openly proclaimed once 18 other souls, spontaneously and independently, recognized and accepted him.
The letters of the living.
Exactly. That group of 19, including Mullah Hussain, would form the spiritual vanguard of his cause. Until they were complete, silence was required.
Mullah Hussain's own description of his transformation at that moment is just staggering. It's maybe the best evidence of the power of that encounter.
It really is. He described himself before meeting the Bab as feeling feeble and impotent. But the instant he recognized the Bab's station, he said he felt possessed of such courage and power that were the world, all its peoples and its potentates, to rise against me, I would, alone and undaunted, withstand their onslaught.
From impotent to ready to take on the world alone.
That's the immediate impact. It wasn't just intellectual acceptance, it was a fundamental transformation of his entire being, granting him a spiritual sovereignty that made all earthly power seem insignificant, like a handful of dust in my grasp, as he put it.
Incredible.
As Abdu'l-Bahá later reflected, this day, May 23rd, 1844, was truly a blessed day and the dawn of manifestation, the day that actively began heralding the imminent arrival of Bahá'u'lláh.
Okay, so that first recognition was incredibly powerful. How did the rest of that core group, the Letters of the Living, come together?
Well, their formation is really a beautiful testament to the Báb's spiritual magnetism. It wasn't like he sent out recruiters or held meetings. 17 other individuals, besides Mullah Hussein, found their way to him and recognized him spontaneously.
Spontaneously? How?
Through direct personal spiritual experiences. The accounts mention guidance coming through visions, powerful dreams, intense prayer, and periods of deep meditation. It was divine grace leading them independently of each other.
That independent recognition piece is so important, isn't it? It shows the message wasn't just spreading through human effort or proximity.
Exactly. It demonstrates a spiritual reality that transcended the physical. The Báb's influence radiated outwards. Now, among these 18 letters, there were some key figures.
Besides Mullah Hussein, who was the first.
Right. The very last of the 18 to recognize him was a young man, only 22, named Quddus. His character, his unwavering faith, and his immense courage were so outstanding that he quickly rose to a very high station within the early community. He's a really pivotal figure.
Okay. And wasn't there also a very prominent woman among them?
Yes, absolutely. Ahiri. She stands out dramatically. She was already renowned as a brilliant poetess and a significant religious scholar in her own right.
And her story of recognition is unique, too, because she wasn't physically present in Shiraz during that initial period, was she?
No, she wasn't. And that makes her recognition even more remarkable. She came to believe in the Báb entirely, through correspondence and significantly through a powerful, vivid dream.
A dream.
Yes. That dream confirmed the spiritual reality of the Báb station for her, proving that physical presence wasn't necessary to receive the divine message. The spiritual energy flowing from the Báb was potent enough to reach and convince receptive souls hundreds of miles away.
And she became a major force, didn't she? Challenging traditions.
A huge force, one of the most valiant, articulate, and ultimately controversial promoters of the cause. She fearlessly challenged centuries of Islamic tradition, particularly regarding the station and role of women, becoming a true icon of spiritual courage.
So once these 18 souls were confirmed, completing the initial circle, the Báb then gave Mullah Hussein a specific major mission, right, sending him north.
A huge commission. He directed Mullah Hussein to travel northwards, specifically through the cities of Isfahan, Kashan, and Qum, diffusing the message as he went. The Báb assured him of divine protection and ultimate victory.
But the key destination was Iran, wasn't it? There was something special about Iran.
Yes. This wasn't just about spreading the news geographically. The Báb expressed a very specific hope for Mullah Hussein in the capital city. He hoped, in his words, that Mullah Hussein would attain in that capital the seat of true sovereignty and to enter the mansion of the beloved.
The seat of true sovereignty, the mansion of the beloved. And didn't he also mention a secret hidden in Iran?
He did. That phraseology, coupled with the reference to a secret, is widely understood by Baha'is as a clear, albeit veiled, reference to Bahá'u'lláh, who was living in Iran at that time.
So the Báb was essentially sending his first apostle, the Báb, to find the manifestation he himself was heralding.
It seems incredibly likely, yes. It directly connects the very beginning of the Báb's mission to its ultimate fulfillment in Bahá'u'lláh. It shows the Báb's dispensation wasn't a closed loop. It was always an open gateway, pointing forward.
Before they all dispersed, the Báb gave a parting address to all the Letters of the Living. And this address is seen as really foundational for Baha'i spiritual life, isn't it? It wasn't about strategy, but character.
Completely about character and spiritual transformation. It set an incredibly high, uncompromising standard. He called on them to strip themselves of every earthly desire, every attachment, to strive to manifest God's attributes in their own lives, attributes like purity, detachment, trustworthiness.
Total renunciation.
Total renunciation. He used that powerful analogy drawing on the words of Christ. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt have lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted?
Meaning their effectiveness depended entirely on their spiritual purity and integrity.
Precisely. Their success wouldn't come from numbers or influence or clever arguments. It would come from the purity of their hearts and the example of their lives. He charged them to prepare the way for what he called a mighty day, trusting solely in God's invincible power. He reminded them of how Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad had all triumphed against seemingly impossible odds.
It sounds like he was preparing them for intense opposition, demanding total self-sacrifice.
He absolutely was. He knew what lay ahead. He was training them to be spiritual warriors, beacons of faith, ready to face ridicule, persecution, and even martyrdom, which many of them did.
And right after sending them out on this immense spiritual charge, the Báb himself undertook a significant journey, the pilgrimage to the holy cities of Islam.
Yes, in October 1844, just a few months after his declaration, he traveled, accompanied by Qudus by sea to Mecca and Medina.
Why was this journey important?
Well, several reasons. On one level, it fulfilled the traditional Islamic requirement of the Hajj pilgrimage. But more significantly, it was a public act. He was taking his claim right to the very heartland of the previous dispensation, Islam.
And he took a specific decisive action while he was in Mecca, didn't he?
He did. He wrote a formal letter, a very clear statement of his mission and station, and he delivered it to the Sharif of Mecca. The Sharif was the highest religious authority there, the guardian of the Kaaba, the holiest shrine.
So a direct notification to the head of the Islamic establishment.
Exactly. A formal announcement, laying his claim before the recognized leadership.
And the Sharif's response, or lack of response.
That's the telling part. The Sharif failed to respond. He essentially ignored the message. This silence, this rejection from the highest religious authority in Mecca, became symbolic of the general refusal by the official Islamic hierarchy to acknowledge the dawn of a new revelation.
After Mecca, he went to Medina.
Yes, the city where the Prophet Muhammad is buried. After completing the pilgrimage rites, he and Qudus began their return journey to Persia, landing back in Bushire.
And it was there, upon their return, that the Báb separated from Qudus. But not before giving him a quite specific and frankly chilling prophecy about what lay ahead for both of them.
Yes, it's a very detailed and poignant moment in the narrative. He forewarned Qudus about the terrible indignities and suffering he would face very soon in the streets of Shiraz. He spoke of physical abuse, public humiliation.
He spelled it out.
He did. But he immediately paired this grim warning with a promise of ultimate spiritual victory. He assured Qudus that despite the suffering, he would attain the presence of Bahá'u'lláh, him who is the one object of our adoration and love, and would ultimately achieve the ineffable joy of quaffing the cup of martyrdom for his sake.
Wow. So suffering, meeting Bahá'u'lláh, then martyrdom.
Yes. And the Báb didn't exclude himself. He explicitly linked their fates, telling Qudus, "I too shall tread the path of sacrifice and will join you in the realm of eternity." He knew his own destiny was martyrdom as well.
That conversation really sets the stage for the next phase, doesn't it? The immediate onset of intense persecution.
It does, dramatically. As we move into Section 5 of the Ruhi material, the story shifts very quickly from declaration and pilgrimage to active, organized opposition. Qudus, following the Báb's instructions, returned to Shiraz.
Full of fervor, presumably.
Absolutely. He began sharing the message with great spiritual energy and enthusiasm. And his success immediately attracted negative attention from the local Islamic clergy and, crucially, from the city's governor, who is described in the text as a particularly cruel and wicked man.
And the response was swift and brutal.
Immediate and designed to make a terrifying public example. Qudus and 2 of his companions were arrested. They were then subjected to horrific public humiliation, intended as an object lesson, the text says, against what the authorities deemed heresy.
What exactly did they do to them?
The sources describe it quite graphically. They had their beards forcibly burned off, a sign of great disrespect. Their noses were pierced and cords were threaded through them. Then they were paraded through the city streets like animals, completely degraded, before finally being expelled from Shiraz.
That's just barbaric. Designed purely to terrorize potential followers.
Exactly. It was the first major systematic attempt by the authorities to extinguish the Báb's cause using fear, public shame, and violence.
But did it work? Did it break their spirit?
Apparently not. Abdu'l-Bahá later praised these first victims of persecution, saying they endured these terrible tests with wonderful power and sublime heroism. So the persecution didn't crush them. In a way, it seemed to forge their faith even stronger. The governor, however, wasn't finished. He then turned his attention directly to the Báb himself.
Right. He was still in Bushehr at this point.
Yes, the governor dispatched guards with explicit orders to arrest the Báb and bring him back to Shiraz in chains.
But the arrest didn't quite go according to the governor's plan, did it? This is one of those really striking moments in the narrative.
It truly is. It perfectly illustrates the contrast between earthly force and spiritual authority. As it happened, the Báb was already traveling toward Shiraz on his own accord. He encountered the governor's mounted escort out in the wilderness.
And what did he do?
Instead of trying to hide or flee, he rode directly towards them. He calmly approached the leader of the guards and with complete candor basically disarmed him by saying, "The governor has sent you to arrest me. Here am I, do with me as you please."
Just like that. No fear, no resistance.
None whatsoever. And the effect on the leader of the guards was immediate and profound. The account says he was so overcome by the Báb's inherent nobility and fearlessness that he instinctively dismounted from his horse, rushed forward, and kissed the Báb's stirrups, a traditional sign of deep reverence and submission.
Wow. So the guard was completely won over.
Completely. He actually begged the Báb to escape, warning him of the governor's cruel intentions and murderous designs. He feared for the Báb's life.
But the Báb refused to flee. What was his reasoning?
His response really underscores his utter reliance on God's will. He said something to the effect of, "Never will I turn my face away from the decree of God. He alone is my sure stronghold, my stay and my refuge. When my hour has come, how great will be my joy to quaff the cup of martyrdom in his name."
Total acceptance of whatever fate awaited him.
Total. The leader of the escort was so deeply moved by this that he couldn't bring himself to put the Báb in chains. Instead, he and his men became a kind of respectful, almost protective escort, allowing the Báb to ride into Shiraz freely, preceding them, unbound.
Incredible. So he arrived in Shiraz not as a prisoner, but almost like a triumphant figure.
In a spiritual sense, yes. Although upon arrival, the governor did publicly rebuke him and ordered him confined to the house of his uncle, but the attempt to degrade him had failed.
And did the persecution actually dampen the enthusiasm for his cause?
Quite the opposite. This is a recurring theme. The sources state clearly that after this incident, despite the confinement, the number of the Báb's followers in Shiraz rapidly increased.
So the persecution backfired.
Completely. People were evidently drawn not by fear, but by the Báb's incredible courage, his serenity in the face of danger, and the spiritual power he radiated. His fame started spreading even further.
To the point where it reached the highest levels, even the king of Persia.
Yes. News of this unusual religious movement and its charismatic young leader eventually reached the Shah, the king. Intrigued or perhaps concerned, the king dispatched one of his most trusted advisors and scholars, a man named
Vahid. And his mission was what?
His explicit mission was to go to Shiraz, investigate the Báb's claims, rigorously cross-examine him, refute his arguments, and basically put an end to this whole affair intellectually. Vahid was considered an intellectual heavyweight, apparently quite confident he could dismantle the Báb's position.
So this was meant to be the definitive intellectual takedown. How did that turn out?
It turned into one of the most significant early victories for the Báb's cause. Vahid met with the Báb 3 times. After these encounters, this brilliant scholar, sent to refute the Báb, became, in the words of the historical accounts, utterly convinced of the youth's divine station.
Utterly convinced after just 3 meetings. What happened?
Vahid himself described the experience. He said that in the Báb's presence, despite all his learning and status, he felt lowly as the dust beneath his feet. It wasn't that he was out-argued in a conventional debate. He was spiritually and intellectually overwhelmed by the sheer power and divine knowledge emanating from the Báb.
So it wasn't just logic, it was a spiritual recognition.
Exactly. Vahid immediately renounced his former position and dedicated his entire life, considerable influence, and intellectual gifts to promoting the Báb's cause. A huge turnaround.
The governor must have been furious. He tried again to have the Báb executed, didn't he?
He did. Still determined to eliminate the Báb, he issued another order for his arrest and execution. But once again, circumstances intervened in a way that seemed almost providential.
What happened this time?
A devastating plague broke out in Shiraz. Conditions became chaotic. The chief police official who was charged with carrying out the arrest found himself forced by the epidemic to temporarily house the Báb in his own home.
Okay.
While the Báb was there, the official's own son fell critically ill with the plague and was on the verge of death. In desperation, the official appealed to the Báb.
And the Báb healed him.
Miraculously, yes. The son recovered. The police official, overcome with a mixture of gratitude, awe, and perhaps fear of divine retribution, went back to the governor and pleaded for the Báb's release.
And the governor likely terrified of the plague himself.
Agreed, but only on the strict condition that the Báb leave Shiraz immediately and never return. So in the fall of 1846, the Báb departed the city, heading towards Isfahan.
And even this departure was marked by another prophecy, wasn't it, to his uncle?
Yes, another poignant farewell. As he left Shiraz, he told his uncle, who had cared for him since childhood, that they would not meet again until they were amidst the mountains of Azerbaijan, the remote northwestern province. And he foretold that it would be there that his uncle would attain the crown of martyrdom.
He knew. He seemed to see the path of suffering laid out so clearly for himself and those closest to him.
It seems that way. He was consciously preparing them, and himself, for the sacrifices required.
So moving into section 6, the Báb arrives in Isfahan, and the reception there, initially at least, was very different from Shiraz.
A stark contrast. The governor of Isfahan at that time is described in the Baha'i histories as being remarkably pure-hearted and just.
That makes a difference.
A huge difference. This governor, upon receiving communication from the Báb, was immediately impressed. He actually instructed the chief cleric of the city to receive the Báb with great honor and warmth. So for a time, the Báb experienced a period of relative peace and respect in Isfahan.
And his influence grew rapidly there, too.
Exploded. Large crowds gathered eagerly to hear him. His message resonated deeply, and his personal charm and spiritual presence won over many hearts.
But this success inevitably attracted jealousy, didn't it, from the established clergy?
Predictably, yes. The local clergy quickly grew intensely jealous of the Báb's growing influence and popularity. They saw their own authority and prestige diminishing. So they began spreading rumors, plotting, and devising schemes to undermine him and ultimately to get rid of him.
How did the governor, this just governor, react when he learned about these plots?
His loyalty to the Báb seems to have been unwavering. To protect him from the clergy's machinations, he took the extraordinary step of inviting the Báb to leave the cleric's residence and come stay in his own governmental palace, essentially under his personal protection.
Wow, that's a strong statement of support.
It was, and living in close proximity, the governor came to recognize the true greatness of the Báb's character and station even more deeply. This led to another remarkable moment.
What was that?
The governor, completely won over, made an incredible offer. He told the Báb he was willing to consecrate his entire personal fortune, described as great riches, to the service of the Báb's cause. Not only that, but he also pledged to use his political influence to travel to the capital, Iran, and personally persuade the king, the Shah, of the truth of the Báb's mission.
That sounds like exactly the kind of powerful support any new movement would dream of. Political backing, financial resources.
It does. But the Báb's response is profoundly important. It reveals a fundamental spiritual principle about how God's cause progresses.
He refused the offer.
He praised the governor's sincere and noble intention, recognizing the purity of his heart. But he gently explained that his faith would not achieve its victory through the support of the rich, the powerful, or the politically connected.
How would it triumph then?
He stated clearly, "Through the poor and lowly of this land," he said, "by the blood which these shall have shed in his path, will the omnipotent sovereign ensure the preservation and consolidate the foundation of his cause."
Wow. So a direct statement that the faith's foundation would be built on sacrifice, on the devotion of ordinary people, not on earthly power or wealth.
Exactly. It's a radical repudiation of the idea that religion needs state patronage or financial backing to succeed. It underscores that true spiritual power is demonstrated through inner transformation, devotion, and selfless sacrifice, not through worldly means.
That's a really critical point. And right after this profound conversation, the Báb delivered another startling prophecy, didn't he? about the governor himself.
Yes, almost immediately following this exchange, he told the governor that his earthly life would end in exactly 3 months and 9 days.
And did it happen?
According to the historical accounts, the governor passed away precisely on the day foretold. This exact fulfillment of the prophecy deeply impacted the believers, but it also left the nascent community in Isfahan suddenly without its most powerful protector.
So with the sympathetic governor gone, what happened to the Báb?
The governor's successor, likely under pressure from the clergy or the central government, issued an order for the Báb to be transferred. He was to be sent significantly in disguise to the capital city, Iran.
In disguise? Why?
The implication seems to be that there was still an intention, perhaps from the king himself, to meet the Báb personally, but maybe also a desire to avoid public fanfare or further clerical agitation en route. An audience with the Shah seemed potentially very close.
But it didn't happen, did it? Political intrigue interfered again.
Yes. This brings us to Section 7 and the introduction of a key antagonist, the Prime Minister of Persia at the time. He's described as being selfish, incompetent, and deeply fearful of losing his own power and influence.
And he saw the Báb as a threat.
He absolutely did. He apparently feared that if the young, charismatic Báb actually met the king and managed to win his favor, the Prime Minister's own position would be fatally undermined. He couldn't risk that meeting.
So what did he do?
He intervened decisively. He managed to countermand the order sending the Báb to Iran. Instead, he issued a new decree, diverting the Báb far away from the capital, sending him instead to the remote northwestern province of Azerbaijan.
As far from the seat of power as possible.
Exactly. The Báb arrived in the city of Tabriz in June 1847. He was immediately placed under strict confinement, with guards ensuring his isolation. Initially, only 2 of his followers were permitted any access at all. The clear objective was to cut him off completely.
And the Prime Minister took it even further, didn't he? Sending him to an even more remote location.
Yes. Believing that even Tabriz wasn't remote enough, the Prime Minister ordered the Báb transferred again, this time to the infamous mountain fortress of Maku.
Maku. That sounds ominous.
It was intended to be. Maku was an exceptionally remote, desolate, and forbidding location, perched high in the mountains near the Turkish border. It was specifically chosen as a place of banishment, a place where the Prime Minister hoped the Báb and his faith would simply be forgotten, fade into obscurity.
The ultimate isolation strategy.
That was the plan. But the Ruhi text makes a powerful observation here, stating that this was a critical miscalculation by the Prime Minister. Why? Because no human hand could put out its flame.
So the isolation didn't work. How did the Báb turn a remote prison into, well, something else?
Through the sheer power of his spirit and character. Even in that harsh confinement, the Báb's innate qualities, his patience, his kindness, his spiritual radiance gradually won over his captors. First, the respect, and then the admiration of the head official of the fortress.
Really? The prison warden, essentially.
Yes, and through him, respect spread among the guards and even the local population of the surrounding region. As this happened, the initially severe restrictions began to relax, bit by bit.
And word got out.
Word got out. Followers, hearing of his location, began undertaking the incredibly difficult and dangerous journey to Maku, seeking his presence. So the intended place of oblivion, ironically, became a pilgrimage site, a beacon attracting devoted believers from across Persia.
The exact opposite of what the Prime Minister wanted.
Completely. And it was during this period of intense, though increasingly porous, imprisonment in Maku that the Báb revealed his most significant work, the Persian Bayan.
The Bayan, that's his primary book of laws and teachings, right?
It is. It contains the laws, ordinances, and principles specific to his own dispensation. But the spiritual significance of the Bayan goes far beyond just those laws, many of which were intended for that specific brief period.
What's its central overarching theme, then?
The most dominant theme, woven throughout the Bayan, is the explicit and repeated announcement of the imminent advent of an even greater divine messenger. The Báb constantly, relentlessly urged his followers to seek, recognize, and follow him whom God shall make manifest.
So he was constantly pointing beyond himself.
Constantly, making the recognition of Baha'u'lláh the ultimate purpose and defining characteristic of being his own follower. The Bayan is fundamentally a book of preparation for the next revelation.
So the Prime Minister hears that Maku isn't working, that the Báb's influence is still spreading. What's his next move?
Predictably, another transfer. He ordered the Báb moved from Maku to yet another fortress, Chirik. This one was considered even more remote and inaccessible, sometimes called the Grievous Mountain.
Trying again to cut off the flow of visitors and influence?
Exactly. But the same pattern repeated itself. Even in Chirik, the Báb's spiritual power couldn't be contained. His influence continued to spread. Reports reached the authorities that even distinguished members of the clergy were being converted after investigating his claims.
Physical imprisonment just wasn't effective against this kind of spiritual force.
It proved utterly useless. The authorities, particularly the clergy who felt most threatened, came to a stark realization. They couldn't stem his influence while he remained alive, no matter where they imprisoned him. They decided they had to try and break him publicly, discredit him definitively.
Which led to the final public examination in Tabriz.
Yes. In July 1848, the Báb was brought back from Chirik to Tabriz, the provincial capital. A formal gathering of high-ranking clergy and officials was convened. But the clear intention wasn't genuine inquiry. It was public humiliation and condemnation.
And they directly challenged him on his identity and mission.
They did. They asked him point blank, essentially, "Who do you claim to be? What is this message you're bringing?"
And how did the Báb respond in this hostile setting?
He seized this final public platform to make his most explicit, powerful, and unambiguous declaration of his station. Facing the combined might of the state and the religious establishment, he declared, and the words just resonate with incredible power, I am the promised one. I am the one whose name you have for 1,000 years invoked, at whose mention you have risen, whose advent you have longed to witness, and the hour of whose revelation you have prayed God to hasten.
I am the promised one. Just unequivocal. No holding back.
Absolutely none. It was a direct claim to being the Qayyim, the figure awaited for centuries in Islam. His enemies, though reportedly awed and somewhat discomfited by his sheer majesty and confidence, were now solidified in their conviction. They concluded that the only way left to stop his ever-growing influence was to extinguish his physical life.
The path to martyrdom was now set.
It was. But before we get to that tragic yet glorious conclusion, Section 8 in the Ruhi Book encourages a moment of reflection, specifically on Abdu'l-Bahá's summary of the Báb's overall impact. It's worth pausing here.
Okay. What was Abdu'l-Bahá's perspective?
He emphasizes the sheer improbability of it all. Think about it. A young merchant, starting out at only 25 years old, essentially standing alone.
Right.
Against the entire power structure of the Persian nation, the government, the deeply entrenched clergy, the prominent leaders, centuries of tradition.
An impossible fight, humanly speaking.
Utterly. And yet, Abdu'l-Bahá points out, the Báb managed to shake the very foundations of Persian society, its laws, customs, morals, established habits. He set the whole nation into commotion. And despite all the coordinated efforts to crush his cause, his star shone forth. His message spread like wildfire.
And Abdu'l-Bahá saw this improbable success because of persecution, not despite it, as proof of his station.
Exactly. He argues that this very phenomenon, a spiritual cause not only surviving but actually flourishing under intense violent opposition, with its followers embracing martyrdom, is the greatest proof that the Báb was not just a reformer, but a divinely empowered universal educator.
It forces you to look beyond human explanations.
It really does. It compels the objective observer to acknowledge that the power driving this movement must have been superhuman, divine in origin. And that brings us finally to the climax of his earth-shattering ministry, the martyrdom, covered in Section 9.
So the decision was made. When was the final order given?
In 1850. A new prime minister had come to power, described as even more ruthless and bloodthirsty than his predecessor. He gave the final, irrevocable order for the Báb's execution.
And the Báb was brought back to Tabriz for this.
Yes, brought from the fortress of Chirik one last time to Tabriz, the same city where he had made his public declaration. As he was being led towards the barracks square where the execution was to take place, another incredibly moving incident occurred involving a young follower named Anis.
Anis, tell us about him.
Anis was a devoted youth who, upon seeing the Báb being led away, desperately forced his way through the guards and the crowds. He threw himself at the Báb's feet, pleading, "Send me not from thee, O Master. Wherever thou goest, suffer me to follow thee."
He wanted to die with him.
He did. Anis apparently had a previous spiritual experience, perhaps a dream or vision, where the Báb had promised him that he would indeed share the cup of martyrdom. The Báb, seeing his utter devotion, comforted him, telling him to arise and be patient, saying, "Tomorrow you shall witness what God has decreed." Anis, along with 2 other companions, was then arrested and allowed to spend the final night with the Báb in his cell.
What was that final evening like?
The accounts describe the Báb as being remarkably serene, even aglow with joy. Fully aware of what awaited him, he seemed to embrace his fate. At one point, he made a profoundly poignant request to his companions.
What was that?
He asked that one of them should arise and, with his own hands, end his life right there in the cell. He explained. He preferred to be slain by the hand of a friend rather than fall victim to the malice of his enemies.
That's an unbelievable request. How did they react?
Initially, stunned silence. No one could move. The emotional weight must have been unbearable. But then the young Anis sprang to his feet, signifying his readiness to obey his master's command, however difficult.
And the Báb chose him.
He accepted Anis's devotion. He declared, essentially, "This youth who has risen to comply with my wish is the one who will share my martyrdom. Him will I choose to share with me its crown." It was the ultimate confirmation of Anis's destiny and the Báb's acceptance of his sacrifice.
So the next morning arrived, July 9th, 1850, the day of execution.
Yes. Early that morning, preparations began. But even then, there was an interruption that highlights the Báb's spiritual sovereignty, even in his final moments. He was engaged in a final confidential conversation with his amanuensis, his secretary.
Yeah.
A government official came to fetch him for the execution. The Báb told the official quite pointedly, "Not until I have said to him all those things that I wish to say, can any earthly power silence me."
Wow. Basically saying, I'm not done yet, you'll wait.
Exactly. He was asserting that the timing was still subject to God's decree, operating through him, not the official schedule. The official, probably bewildered or impatient, didn't understand the significance and simply had the secretary removed. The Báb was then led out to the barrack square for the execution.
What was the scene like there?
A huge crowd had gathered. The sources estimate nearly 10,000 people were packed onto the surrounding rooftops overlooking the courtyard, all there to witness this momentous event. The Báb and his chosen companion, Anis, were to be executed by a firing squad.
And who was in charge of the firing squad?
The commander of the 1st Regiment assigned the task was named Sam Khan. Significantly, he was an Armenian Christian.
A Christian commander executing someone claimed to be the promised one of Islam.
Precisely. And Sam Khan was apparently deeply troubled by this. The historical accounts say he was seized with profound spiritual fear, terrified of incurring God's wrath by killing a potentially holy man, a manifestation of God. He actually approached the Báb directly.
What did he say?
He essentially pleaded with the Báb, explaining his predicament and asking the Báb to somehow free him from this dreadful obligation if his, Sam Khan's, intentions were pure.
And the Báb's response to this conflicted commander?
Again, demonstrating his calm authority, the Báb simply told him, "Follow your instructions, and if your intention be sincere, the Almighty is surely able to relieve you from your perplexity." Almost like saying, do your duty, trust God, and see what happens.
Okay. So the execution proceeded. How were they positioned?
The Báb and Anis were suspended by ropes against a wall of the barracks, fastened to an iron nail. They hung there, exposed targets. The regiment, under Sam Khan's command, reportedly 750 soldiers, arranged in 3 rows of 250, took aim.
750 rifles aimed at 2 suspended figures.
Yes. Sam Khan gave the order, and they all fired simultaneously. A massive volley filling the square with smoke and thunder.
And this leads to the central miracle of the Báb's martyrdom. What happened when the smoke cleared?
The crowd gasped in astonishment and disbelief. Anis, the young companion, was seen standing near the wall, completely unharmed. But the Báb had vanished.
Vanished, completely gone.
Gone from sight. The massive volley of 750 bullets had miraculously done nothing but sever the ropes that held them suspended. Their bodies were untouched.
That's inexplicable by any normal standard. Where did they find him?
A frantic search immediately began. Officials rushed around, searching the barracks, and they found the Báb back in the very same cell he had occupied the night before.
Back in his cell. Doing what?
He was calmly seated, finishing the conversation with his secretary that had been interrupted earlier that morning.
He finished his conversation. The timing was perfect.
Precisely at the moment the execution was meant to resume. Once he had concluded his final instructions, He looked up and said simply to the officials, "I have finished my conversation. Now you may proceed to fulfill your intention."
What was the effect of this miracle on Sam Khan, the commander?
He was utterly stunned. This undeniable proof of divine intervention and protection completely unnerved him. He flatly refused to order his regiment to fire a second time. He reportedly declared he would never again undertake such a duty, ordered his men to march out of the barracks, invoked the Báb's protection, and promptly left the city of Tabriz.
He just walked away, so they had to find another regiment.
They did. Scrambling, the authorities had to call up a different regiment under a different commander, one presumably less troubled by conscience.
And they went through with it the second time.
Yes. Once more, the Báb and the faithful Anis were suspended against the wall. The new regiment took aim and fired. This time, the bullets found their mark.
How are their bodies described after the martyrdom?
The accounts say their bodies were terribly shattered by the volley, fused together into one mass by the impact. But significantly, it's noted that their faces remained largely untouched, preserving their serene countenances even in death.
And just before that second fatal volley, did the Báb say anything, his final words?
He did. Facing the vast multitude watching him, he delivered a final, powerful, prophetic warning. "O wayward generation, had you believed in me, every one of you would have followed the example of this youth Anis, who stood superior to you all in rank. The day will come when you will have recognized me. That day I shall have ceased to be with you."
A final call to recognition and a warning about missed opportunity.
Exactly. It sealed his 9-year mission. The Báb was martyred on July 9th, 1850. He was in his 31st year of life. His sacrifice provided the ultimate spiritual impetus for the new age he had heralded.
Moving towards the conclusion then, Section 11 really asks us to consider the sheer impact of those 9 short years. He launched a spiritual revolution, didn't he? Preparing thousands for him whom God shall make manifest.
Absolutely. And the core question the Ruhi material implicitly poses is, how? How could the lives of so many thousands of ordinary merchants, scholars, clerics, artisans, women, men be so utterly transformed in such a brief time? How could such incredible heroism, such willingness to face torture and death, rise so quickly and so powerfully?
It defies conventional explanation, doesn't it? You can't explain it by politics or just human charisma alone.
And not on this scale, with this level of self-sacrifice. The text concludes, and Baha'is believe, that the only adequate answer lies in the unique divine person of Sayyid Ali Muhammad himself, the Báb.
His station in religious history is really unique. How do Bahá'u'lláh and Abdu'l-Bahá describe him?
Abdu'l-Bahá uses incredibly evocative language. He calls the Báb the manifestation of the unity and oneness of God and the forerunner of the ancient beauty, meaning Baha'u'lláh. He is the morn of truth and the harbinger of the most great light.
So both a manifestation in his own right and the forerunner.
Exactly. A pivotal figure who signalized, marked the end of the prophetic cycle, stretching back through Adam, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and inaugurated the cycle of fulfillment, the era of Baha'u'lláh.
And Baha'u'lláh himself commented on that incredibly short time between his own revelation and the Báb's, didn't he?
He did. He referred to the short span between the two revelations as a secret that no man can unravel, and a mystery such as no mind can fathom. It suggests a divine wisdom and purpose behind that intense, compressed time frame, creating the necessary spiritual bridge for humanity to cross into a new age.
So this incredible history, this knowledge, it's not just meant to be admired academically, is it? The Ruhi material pushes for practical application.
Definitely. It strongly encourages us to internalize the spirit of the Báb, his unwavering faith, his reliance on God, his courage. And it specifically highlights 2 short, powerful prayers revealed by the Báb as practical tools for daily life and for sharing the spirit of the faith.
These are prayers many Baha'is use regularly. Can you remind us of them?
The first one is there any remover of difficulty save God? Say, praise be God, he is God, all are his servants, and all abide by his bidding.
A direct focus on God as the only true source of help, especially in difficulty. You can feel his own experience in that prayer.
Absolutely. And the second one, say, God sufficeth all things above all things, and nothing in the heavens or in the earth but God sufficeth. Verily, he is in himself the knower, the sustainer, the omnipotent.
God is enough. Complete reliance and trust.
These 2 simple affirmations encapsulate the essence of the Báb's unwavering faith. the source of his strength in facing down the entire Persian Empire. They're meant to be touchstones for us.
So ultimately, studying the Báb's life, this deep dive, it gives us the context, the stories, the spiritual insights to be able to share a meaningful account of his role as the forerunner of Baha'u'lláh, the herald of this new age.
Exactly. And perhaps the final spiritual takeaway to really hold on to, reflecting on his whole life and martyrdom, is that his suffering wasn't just a series of tragic events that happened to him. It was a destiny he foresaw, accepted, and consciously embraced. His sacrifice, including the seemingly miraculous events surrounding his martyrdom, was intentional. It was the necessary means to break through old patterns, fulfill ancient prophecies, and demonstrate unequivocally that God's cause ultimately triumphs not through force or politics, but through spiritual truth, steadfastness, and selfless love, even unto death.
A truly powerful and transformative history indeed. And that, I think, brings us to the close of this incredibly intensive deep dive into the life of the Báb from Ruhi Book 4, Section 2.
Thank you again for joining us on this detailed exploration. It's rich material. And remember, we still have more to cover from this book.
That's right. We have 2 more parts of this Ruhi Book 4 deep dive coming your way soon. Our next session will move into the final critical section of the book, focusing on the life of Baha'u'lláh, the Promised One himself.
A journey we're very much looking forward to sharing.
Absolutely. So if you enjoyed this conversation, if you found it valuable, and you want to continue this journey through Ruhi Book 4 with us, please do subscribe to Baha'i Reflections, leave a comment, maybe share this deep dive with others who might be interested.
Your engagement really does help.
It truly does. And a very sincere thank you, as always, to our loyal subscribers and especially to our new channel members. Your support is deeply appreciated. We look forward to seeing you all back here for the next deep dive.